Well, the early modern European witch hunts were fuelled fundamentally by a fear of witchcraft and a fear of witches. For ordinary people, a witch was a neighbour who might be able to do them harm through magic. But for the educated men of that time, a witch was imagined as someone who was in league with the devil. And a lot was actually written and published about this idea. So, for example, there are some very famous demonologies about witches and their pacts with the devil, one of which is the Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of the Witches. Around 100,000 people were tried for witchcraft across Europe, and about 50,000 are executed.
So Alison's work has been hugely influential in the work we do here at Colchester Museums. I will always go to her in the first instance if we're doing any project relating to the witch trials, whether that's writing text or any events that we happen to do. And I go to her because she is not only renowned locally as an expert on the witch trials in Essex, but also internationally.
People accused of witchcraft were tried in courts of law, so they would have been taken into custody and questioned. In Germany, very often they would have been tortured. They were simply forced into admitting that they were witches. In England, the system was somewhat different. Torture wasn't allowed. Still left a little bit of wriggle room for processes like sleep deprivation to creep in. For example, in the Manningtree witch trials, the witchfinders got lots of confessions from people by depriving them of sleep for several nights. The trials lasted about 15 minutes, so your life or death decisions were made in a very short space of time, and we know that 15 of the women accused in Essex were actually hanged in Chelmsford in 1645.
So here in Essex, there are about 1,000 people accused of witchcraft over a period of a couple of hundred years. Some of those people were kept right here in Colchester Castle. And we do a really good job at telling those stories, but of course it's part of a much wider picture. And that's something that Alison's research is really helping with, us understanding how Essex and Colchester fits into this wider narrative of the witch trials in Europe.
I think it's really important to understand more about what happened to avoid misconceptions being repeated. While there's been some really important feminist work on witch persecution that's really highlighted the gender issue and the patriarchal nature of early modern society, some more radical feminists suggest that all of the people executed were women, and that's just not true. So we need to avoid politicising witchcraft research to that extent. I think we also need to learn from the witch trials. They're a very good example of what happens if we let sort of hysteria, intolerance and scapegoating marginalise people and then end up sort of abusing and ultimately executing them for what were really non-existent crimes. So I think the efforts to remember the victims of the witch hunts really matter, particularly when they take the form of public memorials, because that's a way of academic research hopefully reaching out to wider public audiences, interacting with them and reminding them of this very dark period in our history.